All right. Sorry, I have a lozenge in my mouth because I got really excited and then I sort of started losing my voice. Uh, so if you hear like the girls like, oh, sorry. I have to stand because I'm a fidget. So welcome, everyone, to creating characters in ethnic dysphoria. I want to first go over like thanks to everyone who sponsored me coming here. I'm not going to read out all the names because there's so many of them. Because I wouldn't have been able to come all the way from Toronto if it wasn't for everyone on this list and more. Connection lost. Great. Good talk. Okay, so we're going to go from the laptop then. So for a warning, I swear like a sailor. I'm going to try not to, but it's going to fucking happen. Jesus. And I also talk a lot about race and like aspects of dysphoria and dissonance. So if that like if it upsets you, feel free to leave. I get it. Like I'm gonna try and make it funny, like not make fun of it, but like I make fun of myself. So hopefully that'll help everyone. So a lot of people have asked me, what does this talk about? This talk will definitely cover my life as an adoptee and my personal experiences growing up with my white family, who I love, how it affected my self-image growing up, and like blatant systemic oppression, and how that affected my character design choices as a growing artist. I'm going to put this back in here because I'm done with holding it. I'm a professional. Okay, so... Please cooperate. And like a lot of Project Solace, which is like my own personal graphic novel project, coming out in 2016. And like in its evolution, how it tracked my own evolution as an artist as I waded through the murky waters of dissonance. And you're like, okay, so who's this girl up at the front of the room right now? I am Leisha-Marie Riddel. I'm an illustrator who works in games and independent graphic novels. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, which is why I had the fundraiser to get here, because it's $1 billion. And I'm the creator of Project Solace, which you may have heard of, I hope you have, and a feminist superhero comic, one of many. And I'm a member of Dames Making Games Toronto, a nonprofit for women, queer, and non-binary persons in Toronto. I'm a proud adoptee, and I'm really, really gay. Okay, so let's talk about adoption for a second. Like, we have the ops. So, like, I was adopted by an upper middle-class Scottish family, and my father was the vice president of his company, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and it was really nice to have her around as I was growing up. I mean, I'm a little spoiled and coddled, right? But it was nice to have her around. And we had money. We still do. We had property and investments, and I can't say that I would have that if I wasn't adopted. I'd be a hot mess or dead in the Philippines. And the downs, everything else that I'm about to cover. So it's like, okay, ethnic dysphoria, what the hell does that mean, right? Dysphoria, defining dysphoria itself is a generalized dissatisfaction, or the opposite of euphoria. In this instance, it describes a lack of satisfaction of being a certain heritage or ethnicity. And in this scenario, it could also be described as dissonance. So the early years of being adopted, growing up Filipina, there are a lot of expectations and assumptions about who I was. And like the expectation of my fellow Filipino people was that I spoke Tagalog. I don't. I still don't. And I probably never will. And the expectation of my fellow students was that I look like my parents. And I don't. I still don't. And I never will. And like, speaking of looking like my parents, a funny story about crossing the border. When I was 4 years old, my mom decided to take me to Buffalo, New York for my birthday. And like crossing the border was fine, right? They're like, okay, have fun. And we were coming back and we were stopped for over 30 minutes because they thought I was stolen. And they're like, okay, hey little girl, who's that lady in the front seat? And it's just like, that's my mommy. And they're like, because there is like a stigma about adoption, right? It's like one of the main assumed stigmas is that adopted children will have problems, right? Like issues, physical, mental, emotional, and like if people who can have their own children, because my mom had 2 sons prior to me, 3 technically, but one unfortunately passed away, and that they should be grateful for what they have. But in reality, there's just as much of a gamble with like naturally born children as there is adopted children. because you know what, like oftentimes adopted children will be already born, and you can look at their medical records. Technically speaking, it's like, oh, no, this one has like a disability, but you know what, I still want it because I love it. Anyway, so I grew up in the 90s, so like as soon as you see cultural representation in media in the 90s, you know I'm talking about like terribly dubbed anime, right? I'm talking like egregious rewrites and just erasure of the original culture in anime, right? Like when you're looking for like greater representation of different cultures in media as like this little Asian kid and like this white family, you're like, I want to learn more about Asia. This cartoon's from Asia, right? So I want to watch that, except it's been dubbed by Deke and it sounds like garbage and their names are not Japanese. And it's like, oh, her name's Lita now, I guess, right? And Serena, who's that? I don't even remember. I'm like Amy and Ray. That's vaguely the same, but I don't even remember Venus's name because it was so offensive, probably. And like the only reason I still kind of think Pokemon's okay was because it was based off the localization team for the game. Put this back. I'm gonna smack it at one point. You're all gonna get mad at me. But like really, when you're looking at anime from the 90s, sorry. When you're looking at anime from the 90s, like, the only things that stands out to me that I remember specifically when I went to Japan finally, and thinking, oh, you know what, that was from anime, and this is in Japan, and it's real. It's from the Digimon, I think, movie or finale. And I remember seeing that on Odaiba and being like, oh, it's real. Anime wasn't lying. They weren't just like whitewashing everything. That's real. It's in Japan. And so is this, right? And I found out, I was like, oh, that's so cool, Tokyo Tower. And like, really, the first time I saw Tokyo Tower was from like an art book from Magic Knight Rares that I got in Goodwill that was entirely in Japanese. But you know what? I loved it, right? Because I'm like, whoa, this isn't white. Great, thanks. And like, I've always been an artist, right? And I was always young and confused. I'm still confused. And I always drew characters, and I always knew that I wanted to do what I do now, which is character design, visual development, and concept art. But like the way I drew ethnicity was off, to put it politely, I guess. And I'm not talking like ethnically ambiguous, like that hilarious BuzzFeed video, right? Where they're talking about like people trying to make gross assumptions about what you are, which still happens, and no one should ever do that, right? I'm talking about just lost, right? And like, I think it really affected me growing up. Well, that's what the talk's about, right? Anyway, I want to talk about my mom for a second and the Scottish Thunder. I applied to Cawthra Park Secondary School, which is a school in Mississauga, where I grew up, and which had a specialized visual arts program. And Mom was like, you know what, you should go there so you can learn how to be a better artist. It doesn't help. But it's a privatized school, right? So I didn't get accepted at first due to apparent poor listening skills, even though like my marks were well into the 90s, right? Like I'm not bragging, but like poor listening, just because I'd be like this sometimes in class, sorry, right? So my mom went into the school, basically stormed in, like guns a-blazing, well, verbal guns a-blazing, and she made the program coordinator review my application. And after several days, it worked, and I got into Cawthra. Yay! Right? And like history repeated itself in 2006 when I applied to Sheridan College, and she brought the Scottish Thunder again because I didn't get accepted again. And like she opened the appeal process, and I got in because dang it, my child's getting in, right? And I don't think that would have worked if my mom wasn't like an angry Scotswoman. Let's be honest. But you know what? Now I'm in Cawthra, right? And now I'm a teenager. And teenagers are assholes. But I didn't experience a lot of problems from my peers about adoption. They were just like assholes, right? Like teenagers just take umbrage with like you being gay, maybe. Right? And them being gay, maybe, and they're scared. And everyone's scared. I'm still scared. Everyone's still scared, right? And, like, my high school's racist, right? Like, and I, to this day, regret going to Cawthra, right? And, like, there's a ton of white kids at my school. So, like, around 2003, 4, whatever, there was like 80% Caucasian students, and out of that 80% was like 80% Ukrainian, right? Right? Like there was other stuff, but like there was 5% Middle Eastern, 5% Indian, 8% Chinese, 2% Korean. And like the entire time I was there was 4 black kids and like another Filipino girl, and we didn't get along at all. We just hated each other. I'd see her and I'd be like. But anyway, I'm still into anime and Final Fantasy because dang, I saw Youre in Final Fantasy X and I'm like, yo, she's just as ethnically ambiguous as I am. Like she's like maybe white, maybe, but her name's Youre. That's Japanese, right? Like Youre Ito from and. But that was awesome, and I was like, wow, this is like the first character that I'm connecting to on like a personal level, right? And like, yeah, it's kind of dubious, like what she looks like, but I liked her. And you know what? Like Final Fantasy was where I was going with my art direction, and like, just I was trying to be better at drawing ethnicities, but they ended up just being white, which is fine. Like my parents are white, and this is an example from grade 12. I don't know why it's called that. But like, I can guarantee you, my intention was that both of these characters were different races. And I can show you, as I am, that they're not. And I know, like, I'm 16, 17, so my drawing is not great. But, like, I'm scared of taking that next step to just being more open about that, I guess. But you know what? In high school, the adults were the bigger assholes, right? Let's be honest, right? We're like, what's worse than baby boomers? When I was 16, I realized I was not going to get the same privileges as my parents before me, or like the privilege by proxy, because my mom was at my school with me. She wasn't going to help me get through like my problems. So when I was 16, I auditioned for The Sound of Music for the part of Liesl, right? And like I'm no Julie Andrews, right? But 16 going on 17 is not a difficult song, right? And like I'd like to think that I can vaguely move my legs to music and vaguely sing. So I thought I would do okay. And if you haven't seen The Sound of Music, A, go see it. B, this is what she looks like in the movie. Anyway, that's Charmin Carr in the 19 movie Sound of Music. So like The Sound of Music, I was later told, after I got to the final round of auditions, right, they could have just said no at the beginning, but I got to like 3 rounds of auditions, and I was told I wasn't going to be a good fit for Lisa Von Trapp because I don't look like a Von Trapp. And I'm like now I would sass them. Now I would get like the sass hand going, and I'd be like, excuse you, right? And by the way, the girl who played Liesl was not that good. And you know what? I was 16, I was sad, I was depressed, I was gay in high school, full of like Orthodox Catholic Ukrainian girls, and it was just like, I can't do this, right? So I didn't bring it up to anyone, not even to my mom, who would have like elbow dropped like someone. But it just didn't happen. So I just left high school with that sad little memory just hanging on my back. So to college I go, right? And so like a lot of the time, I went to Sheridan, which is an animation school. So we had to draw ourselves a lot. And I would draw myself and I would start digital painting myself. And I would often get the, hey Leisha, you're not white though, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I know I'm not, obviously, right? And they're like, yeah, but your skin tone is not that. And I'm like, I don't. And like people just remind me that like, hey, you know what? Like your skin tone is like darker than that, and it just like brightens down. And I'm like, I don't, right? And that messed with me because I couldn't take that idea seriously, right? And that's when the dissonance really started to like take place. I was like, oh, right? Like it wasn't like Belle level, like that movie where I'm not talking about Beauty and the Beast. I'm talking about like the black aristocracy in the States where she's like scratching at her face. I wasn't like that, but I was like, dang it. And so I just deleted the art, most of it. I couldn't take myself seriously, right? So when I really started being like, okay, yeah, I'm Asian, haha, lol, right? I would make fun of being Asian instead of just being like, okay, cool, just this is me, this is a character of myself. I would just make fun of myself. And this is offensive, and I apologize, but that's what I drew, right? And like, anyway, so I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna be a little bit more worldly and add some culture to my personal projects. And culture in this case is a dubious word. But like I wanted to feel less racist. I wanted to feel like I was doing the right thing with my art and being more diverse, even though diverse wasn't a word that I used like at all. I was just like, haha, I'm being cultured, right? And also self-reflective of my life at the time, right? Because I ended up seeing someone who was Russian, and I was like, I should put Russian stuff in my stories, right? And so, like, this is what I tried to do, right? This is approximately 2008, 2009. And, like, I'm just going to walk over here for a second. I'm going to take this with me. Come here, you. Can we just talk? Ooh, Jesus, hello. Can we just talk about this for a second? What is that? Other than extremely offensive. I still couldn't take Asian seriously, and I'm sorry. But like I thought that this was the right thing to do, for sure. It's not. But that's where Project Solace, even though that wasn't the name then, nor was Flight of the Valkyrie, I don't know where that came from. But you know what? Now I'm a grown-ass woman, okay? And I want to talk about Project Solace now because I'm a dirty it really tracks like my progress as like a human. And I want to talk about my character, Rhys Williams. I'm going to put this back. Professionalism. I want to talk about Rhys Williams because she's my baby. I've had her since I was 4. I made her up at like a summer art camp, and I was sitting there on the table, and I was like, look at me, OC, do not steal, right? And so I made her up, right? And like I was 4 or 5 or 6, something like that. And she was a Pokemon trainer. She accompanied Ash around the world catching Pokemon. Of course she did, right? Because that's what you watch, right? And his name's not even Ash, let's be honest. And like, I don't have any art of it. I'm sure my mom does, somewhere in the deep depths of the basement of the Riddel household. But I dare not venture there. But you know what? She had blue hair and blue eyes, right? Because I was 4. And she was white, right? Because like, okay, let's go back to media, right? Everyone was white. Everyone was white in cartoons, right? Everyone was white in cartoons. I think I see one black character there. Do I see and like one really racist Asian character up in the corner? Yeah, great. That's what I'm watching, right? So she was white. And so like as I grew older, I'm like, you know what? I need to make myself more cultured, right? So she ended up at like Italian. When I was in college, I wanted to be more culturally interesting. So I made her like olive skin and dark hair, and that's how you make them not white, right? Just brightens down. And then I made her Italian because, oh, water. Nice. Like, she's pretty ambiguous, and I actually found this gem. And like, yeah, I guess. But like, okay. One of the things about Project Solace is that I refused to put it in Toronto for some odd reason. Like, that was some sin if I included it in Toronto. But now that it is, I was like, okay, let's look at the demographic of people who live in my city. There's a lot of everyone, but like there's this particularly large demographic because unfortunately Mississauga has earned the really racist name of Browntown, right? But there is a large demographic of Indian people, and I'm like, you know what, I really want to represent that in my story. So now she's Indian, right? And like I said, I set it in Toronto, Indian, blah, 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 and there she is now. But like I want to interrupt all the character slides to talk about good art practices, right? Because you don't want to just like, oh, she's Indian, the end, bye. You want to avoid tokenism, right? Like you don't want to have like the character that has You don't want to have the character that has the exact same experiences as everyone else, right? And is just like brightness down. Like you don't want to do that, right? Like everyone, like you want to avoid that because like you have to do in-depth research into your character because everyone has different experiences, right? Like that's why we're here. That's why we're at GaymerX because everyone has different experiences in different walks of life, right? So like when I talk about research, it's not hard, right? I have a full-time ass job. I have like volunteer work and I do my comic on the side and I still am able to, do some research, right? So the decision to make her Indian, I'm like, okay, I can make her Indian. And it's not like, okay, cool, I did it, bye, right? Like, especially when you're character designing, and you can apply this to writing too, you just have to like immerse yourself in it. And like one of the easiest ways is just Google image search, right? Like what does an Indian woman look like, right? So I Google image searched it, and then you draw a bunch, right? Or write a bunch, because I guess Google image search wouldn't work for writing, but it would. You'd still have to describe them. And then I wanted to research like Hindu, right? Like Hinduism, and like all the things that entail with that, and like I didn't know a lot, and you can't get a lot from Wikipedia and Google, so you have to ask people. Like, talk to Indian people born here or immigrated. And that's what I did. My manager's Indian, and I'm like, yo, I have this Indian character. I want to do her justice. I want to do her right. And she's like, okay. Well, often if they are religious, right? I'm like, I don't know if she is, but she might be. And she's like, okay, well, there's a God that'll fuck you up if you don't do it right. Like, if you pray to her and then you don't actually do what you're supposed to do, she'll fuck you up. And I'm like, oh, tell me more about this God. I want to know about the ass-kicking God. She's like, yeah, her name is Durga. And I'm like, oh, okay, tell me more about Durga. And like, I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go and just talk to someone, right? And I talked to plenty of people. But like, that's the most prominent story. And then I drew a bunch after that. And like, you have to keep drawing, especially like if you want to get into character art. Like, you just have to like draw forever to the point of rudeness at like restaurants and stuff. And then I was like, okay, so in the story, it's not a spoiler. It is a bit. She gets married, so I'm like, okay, I want to research Indian weddings, right? And I want to do that right. And like I went on the internet and I was researching Indian weddings, and I found this beautiful, like adorable, made me cry, even though it wasn't my wedding, between like a lesbian couple in New York. And it was like a half Jewish, half Indian wedding where they had like a Jewish ceremony and like an Indian reception. And it was amazing. I cried. And I was like, okay, I have to keep researching it. And then you Google image wedding stories. And then you also talk to people like, what's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of the bangles? What's the meaning of the henna, right? And then that's when you're like, okay, I think I've done enough, at least preliminary research to do something like that, right? And like, that makes me cry. And I made it. But like, I showed it to my manager, and she's like, wow, yeah, no, I can see where everything that you asked me came into play. Because like it's not wrong, right? Like there was nothing that glaringly stood out as like, oh, that's not Indian though, right? So yeah, anyway. So that's just some like good art practices that I do. But like I really enjoy drawing her. I want her to be pretty, but I want her to also be like obviously Indian, right? And obviously you can't see that in like her skin tone and pencil, but like that's who she is now, and I'm really confident in what she looks like. And like I included this one because it was interesting to note, even though this talk is not about gender, because I'm a dirty, gross cis person. I'm sorry for existing. But I wanted to talk about gender coding, especially in character design, because musculature, like especially when it's extremely defined as it is on the left, is often coded as masculine, right? And fuck that, right? You can have like really feminine but muscly women in your stories because whatever, do what you want, right? So I want to talk about the character in the back now. I want to talk about Alex Wolf. And like, to be very honest, I think she started as an S Club 7 member. I think it was like a replacement for Hannah, who I met, by the way, and she's not nice. I made an AU for my own story because I was 14 and that's what you do, And I needed a new girl. I made Alexandria Durocher, right? That's not her name now, obviously. And she essentially looks the same now, but shittier. And then, as I mentioned, she ends up at probably Russian, right? Like, as I mentioned, more culture, my story. And I was dating a Russian person, and I was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I made someone Russian for you, right? And, like, obviously, in my skewed perspective, all Russians wear tons of fur, right? Anyway, so now that I've decided that I'm not racist, she's just a white bread Canadian. And she has like vague European heritage, like, you know, like second or third generation Canadians, right? Like born here, so her parents. And I made her awkwardly tall, like 6'3", because it's cute. And she's shy and like kind of lanky, right? Small. And she's plain, but she's pretty, right? And she's a great blank slate, which is a great thing for a protagonist, right? Like someone who learns. She's a learning computer, right? So like just some drawings that I've done of her, right? I like her. She's cute. I date her. And like I said, gender isn't the topic of discussion. And like I know I used she, her with her just now, but like, and it's a bit of a spoiler, but eventually I decided, hey, you know what, maybe I'll experiment with the idea of her being eventually gender fluid, right? But that's not now. This one's interesting. Crystal Reyes Hall. I don't even want to read that. Yeah, she used to be the black girl's sister, except she wasn't black. And I made an entire webcomic about it, and I justified it by saying that they were half sisters, even though she was blonde hair, blue eyes, because, right? And she was originally made as a villain when I was 15, and then I was like, eh. And so here's the cover. And I was like, it's fine, right? But like there was something about Crystal that I didn't like. And like I was never satisfied with who she was, which sounds terrible, right? It sounds like I'm kidding, my mom loves me. Did she have a gender misidentity? Did she have no gender? No, she just wasn't white. Or like it was more complicated than that, and it was something that I needed to do for myself. My hair is doing its own thing. I'm sorry. And like I decided that Crystal Gallagher will become Crystal Reyes Hall, a white passing mixed race Filipina girl who succeeds in musical theater because she passes as a white girl. Hashtag living vicariously. So there she is. She doesn't do that when she's in musical theater, but she loses everything. She just goes with her hair, and now she's awesome. Everyone loves her hair, right? Yeah, living vicariously. Anyway, so like I love drawing her. I love drawing her mohawk, and like sorry. Anyway, so like this is actually an illustration I did before I made her Filipina. It was like a recent decision. I'm talking like 3 weeks ago, recent, and like, and there is like an egregious lack of Filipino representation in media that isn't like, what's her name from Glee, and like, or isn't like the Filipina nanny going, add me on Facebook, right? Like just put like a Filipina character in media, man. Like just have her be cool. I want that. Like I didn't see that when I was growing up. Wouldn't that be nice? Like if she didn't have blue eyes there, sorry. Wouldn't that be awesome if you're like a little 8-year-old Filipino girl being like, yo, she's like me, right? Again, anyway, so yesterday I went to State of Play, and I was listening to Evan Narcissus bits very closely, and I was like, okay, this is a character that I didn't originally include in the slides, but because I thought people might get mad at me, and I don't want people to be mad at me. But I want to talk about Dr. Michelle Ramirez, aka the character that people might get mad at me for. And when I was younger, she was the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Hispanic, which doesn't not happen, right? But it was, in my case, it was a dissonance that made her blonde-haired, blue-eyed. And like I came over when I was 10, and she was Lisa's best friend, and I guess she still kind of is, right? But like, it was like this strange little decision that like, I wanted to create a black character because there's not enough in media, but like, it's definitely creating black characters with a non-black creator. And I didn't want to include her because I don't, like, it's a heated subject, especially with everything that's going on in America, I'm sorry. But like, after hearing Evan talk yesterday, it was important that I talk about her, especially in media. And like, the reason she has straight hair isn't because like I refuse to draw natural hair, but the issue of blending in. And like, this is the only time I'll have a video, and it's probably some sort of copyright infringement. But like, see Viola Davis and How to Get Away with Murder, and this is what inspired it. Please play. But yeah, like I read the interview with Viola after this aired, and I'm sorry if it's a spoiler and you haven't seen it yet, but too bad. Like, she talks about how she has to do it so she's more easily palatable to her coworkers, and that was the decision I made for Michelle. Anyway, I'm gonna stop this. Anyway, so like, and like what Evan was talking about yesterday, like, why isn't there just like black characters trying to do their goddamn job and just live, right? It's not, but they don't want to see things about slavery anymore, and I don't want to see Filipina nannies anymore because there's more of us out there, right? And like the first sketch, the kids, like, I don't really like the kids that are in the first sketch, and like I know they're mixed race because her husband looks suspiciously like Markiplier. I might be living a fantasy through that. Harshing my queer cred a bit. But like, I wanted to show like just that struggle with her and her family, but she's just someone trying to live her life, and I wanted to be someone that like people who read it can look up to, right? Because she's just a doctor trying to do her job at Project Solace, the end, right? But I also wanted to show like pride and heritage, right? And that's why I made this character, Daniel Jupiter. And like, I still want like girls, even though the story is fairly inappropriate for younger girls, like young teenage girls to read it and be like, oh cool, like she has hair like me, right? And like, that's why I made Daniel Jupiter. And by the way, I looked it up. I was doing a lot of research about like Haitian last names, and I was like, Jupiter's a last name? That's so badass. Anyway, but like the ultimate goal of Project Solace is that I want to have a story with real characters that mean something, and probably showcase the cultures and the worlds that they come from, right? And I want to try and make sure that everyone's included, and that includes trans and non-binary, right? And like, I want to do that, and I want to do it right. So that's why I was delaying it so long, because I've had it forever. Anyone who knows me closely knows I've been doing this forever. And they're like, just fucking do it already. I'm like, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't, right? And I want to make it badass, right? Like, I want like badass women in media that aren't being like just shoved in the corner and being like, oh, don't listen to her. Fuck that, right? I want this. You can buy this, by the way. And like, I just want to go into like designing non-white characters briefly, right? And like, just again, like, Wikipedia is a good start. Don't only use Wikipedia. It's not hard. Naming a character something that means something to your story, right? Like, I know that like Rhys Williams doesn't mean Jack necessarily, but like when you're making like a character that isn't your heritage or your ethnicity, like try and make it mean something, right? And talk to people that have experienced things that you haven't, right? And what you're writing about or you're creating, right? And talk to people that come from that country/society. And like, remember that experiences differ from country to country. So like, a Haitian from Haiti is very different from a Haitian from Montreal, Quebec, and a Haitian from Brampton, right? They're all very different experiences. And ask people that have recently immigrated, as well as people who grew up here, for a full spectrum of choices for your characters. And go on Reddit. Like, if you don't have anyone that you know, but you want to create like a Korean character, go to that thread and start a thread in that subreddit. And I know Reddit is like dangerous, dark place sometimes. But like, generally speaking, you can go on and ask like a question and be like, hey, what's it like growing up in Korea, right? And like, and that's not a bad start. And I know there's so many white characters in media, and we don't need any more. We don't. But if you are gonna do it, like try and make them conscious characters, right? White characters are still fine, right? But they shouldn't take away the spotlight from the underprivileged characters, right? And like privilege still exists in fiction, even if in your magical world white people are like just garbage compared to everyone else. In reality, we know the reality, right? And like make them a learning computer, right? Like make them like have their heritage, but also make them learn like that they can't just walk on people. Like that's what I'm doing. That's just what sorry, brain fart. Hello. And like, just make them aware of what they have, right? And if they're a protagonist, make them awesome. And if they're the antagonist, make them Trump. So when they get defeated, it's A+ good shit, right? In the end, you're always going to offend someone. Someone's going to be like, buddy. Right? And you're going to be like, I'm sorry, right? Like, I'm trying my best. This is just me. I'm sorry, right? Like, own up to your work. Own your work. But also own the criticism that you receive, right? And in the end, do what feels right. Do what feels right for your characters. And do what makes you happy. Thank you. So, we have some time. Questions? Yes, over there with the glasses. Yes, you. Let me make a new slide. Oh, what's this? I'm making a slide. Oh, dang it. You can find me. Oh, this is the worst. Sorry. I can't do this. Oh, wow, I can't do this. You can find it on my Twitter. And you can find it on my Tumblr, which will be up on the screen momentarily. And you can find it on my Patreon. And you can give me money on my Patreon because I have no money. I am so broke. I am so broke all the time. The goat, he screams like a man. How do I make this bigger? Oh, geez. Okay. How do I... Oh, what's that? Oh, it's up there now. That's not working. Well, the second one is Tumblr. Next question? Yes.
So for making like a test for your comic, has anybody accused you of tokenism because you're going for diversity? Because like I always have that worry, like when I create cast of characters, because you want that inclusivity. Like, okay, I want this, and I want this, and but am I doing this just to have them? Do I have an actual purpose for their identity in this story?
Well, I feel like if it's taking place in reality, they're always going to have a purpose in the story because we all have a purpose in existing in this world, right? So they're going to have ethnic diversity no matter where they go, unless they live on this island where it's magically all white people, right? Or magically all everything else. Like, it depends on where it takes place, too, right? But, like, you always, like, really just do what feels right to you. There you go, right? No, I decided to go hard mode and go in Toronto, right? But no, I actually haven't experienced a lot of people going like, right? I haven't experienced a lot of that. Because a lot of people are like, oh no, that's cool that you're trying to diversify Project Solace, but you know what, like maybe you should just release it though. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yes, over there with the pink bandana. Sorry, I'm fiddling with my watch. I'm a fidget.
Yeah, a little bit ago you said make characters' names mean something
Yes.
from other things. Sorry to be like, I don't get it, but could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay, honestly, I included that because I experienced something like just last weekend. There was a game being showcased, and I won't call them out, but they had, it was like X, the Kung Fu Princess, right? And I was like, okay, that's kind of a dubious name, but sure. And they walked up to me, A, And I was like, cool, like, they're not Asian, but they're trying to, like, explore, like, Chinese culture. And they're like, hey, we don't really like the name of our character. Can you help us rename her? I'm like, sure, like, let's go and Google and, like, Google some, like, cool Chinese names that represent her. What's she like? And they're like, no, I have a list, right? And I'm like, a list. And it's just a list of, like, Chinese names. And they're like, yeah, can you just choose from this list? And I'm like, what do these names mean? And they're like, I don't know. So, like, I know that, like, personally, like, a lot of the characters in my story don't necessarily mean anything. So, like, you can have names that just are names, right? Like, Rhys Williams is just a name. But if you're really trying to go for names that you're not familiar with from a different language, especially, and you want it to have, like, very specific symbolism, then that's where you would, like, name your character. Like, in that instance, I was like, why don't you just name her something that's, like, Rebel something, right? Because she's a princess, but she does kung fu, and that's awesome, right? But they're like, no, here's, like, a list of names, and it kind of looks like a dim sum menu. Like, I'm like, and it did. It had checkbox and, like, numbers beside it. I'm like, what is this? Don't do that, right? Like, that's offensive. And they're like, no, just choose a name. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I refused, right, because it was gross. But actually, funny story, I'm going to ramble, sorry, because we have a few minutes left. Alex Wolf was not her original name, obviously. It was Alex Durocher. But in fourth year, I made a final film, and it was going to be originally based off of Little Red Riding Hood, and she was the big bad wolf. And Alex Wolf. The end. Next question? Yes? At the back?
I was wondering if, the story that you just told, it kind of like answers my question a little bit. But I was wondering if you had any like more advice to people that like in terms of just rhetoric, to talk to like your fellow creatives.
Yeah.
Because like I've met many people that. You know, like you were talking about, like what feels right to you. A lot of people feel what's right to them is to have all white casts. So I'm wondering if you've ever been like other types of situations where you're like, yeah, but maybe what's actually right, or like, or just like trying to argue to them like why it's important.
Right. Well, I specifically put "Do What Feels Right to You" for this crowd because I knew "Do What Feels Right to You" was not going to be an all-white cast. But like. I don't really have a good answer for that because some people just won't listen. And like you can talk to them as much as you want, but like you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But like just show them like cool stories with like diverse casts and like maybe they'll feel inspired. Like that's the best advice I can give you. Okay. Yes, at the back with the hat.
First, I want to say I'm just really grateful for what you're doing with your art and race.
Thank you.
I really think that's needed. My question is, you said you went to art school, right? You said it didn't help that much?
That specific one probably didn't.
Okay, well, if you could just tell us, like, what particular art practices helped you and what was your main influences for your style of art? Because I'm really interested in that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's a good question. Because Concert Park was a pile of horse. I use horse for swear words. I don't know why. Yeah, like I copied, right? Like I still do. Like I'll look at someone like really awesome, like Corey Loftus, Helen Chen, and I'll just like emulate their work. And that's what I did as a teenager growing up. I would just draw from Clamp. I drew like from Death Note. I would just copy styles right out of like books and stuff, and I would just go and I draw that forever. And I drew. I did a lot of like the actual Copic and like pen and ink work, and like that really helped me just develop my style. But like my art took a big leap and bound once I started working, because like Sheridan was fine, but like Sheridan taught me animation. It didn't teach me how to draw, and my old art director was really the one that really pushed me to get better at digital painting and drawing and everything like that. Sorry, I just sniffed into the microphone. That was gross. I'm trying to think of like specific things that really helped me. Just drawing constantly and like trying to aspire to be like artists that you admire, but always taking your own take on it. Like that's what helped me, for sure. Yes? Yes.
First of all, I have to echo. Oh, thank you. First of all, I have to echo our friend back there. I just want to thank you. I can't tell you how special it is to me to see someone who looks like me in a comic book. It's kind of viscerally emotional. But beyond that, I wanted to ask you, surely you've observed that it's a lot easier to represent different queer identities or show different races when those characters are still maybe attractive or very thin. And I was wondering kind of what strategies you use to, or what tools you use to decide, how you're going to portray body diversity, and how did you decide this character is going to be larger or thinner, and if you had any insight on that.
Yeah, I did receive some flack on that because a lot of people are like, hey, everyone in Project Solace is really thin. And I'm like, no, I know. But, but it's a personal story because, like, I showed that and they're like, hey, you know what, everyone's really thin in your story. And I'm like, well, technically, no, the Doctor is a bit bigger. But I do actually have, like, characters with disabilities, characters who are bigger, and, like, yeah, like, a lot of the main characters are really pretty, and it's because they're eye candy to me, and it's an entirely selfish decision. Honesty. But, like, no, I decided that, like, sure, there's characters with disabilities and characters with things that aren't normal, right, as gross as that term is. But, like, I can't actually pinpoint why I put them in there, other than that I felt that it was right. Like, I wish I had, like, a picture of my character, Jenna, who's in a wheelchair, but she doesn't hear about it, right? So. Yes, at the back. Yeah, this is the last question.
So, I was wondering if you had any advice for writing characters who are diverse, but who might be, like, villains, or maybe not necessarily, like, protagonist heroes. Like, how do you create a character who they can be, like, they're just not, like, the tragic ethnic person, but, like, their ethnicity is just a part of them?
There's actually this interesting dilemma that I came up with recently. I was writing the antagonists for Project Solace. They're called the matriarchs. And, like, I was writing them, and I was making them diverse, and actually, like, it sounds terrible, but, like, okay, now I'll go more into them first. And, like, the more I developed, the more I fell in love with them, so I decided to make them antagonists, but not villains, right? So, like, they have different viewpoints from the protagonists, but they're not necessarily wrong, right? It depends on where you stand, like, who you would stand with. And that's how I solve the problem, because they're not necessarily wrong, they're just not right to the protagonists. And like, actually, Danielle Jupiter's in the matriarch, so I'm like, I don't want to be terrible and have, like the natural-haired black woman and, like, the first trans character in my story be on the villain side. That's terrible, right? But, like, that's how it ended up. Like, they're the antagonists, but they're not wrong. So, like, when you're writing a villain, you always have to make sure that in their head, or, like, even in my case, like, they might be morally gray, but they're not necessarily, like, the worst. They're not Donald Trump, basically, is what I'm saying. Make him white. Sorry, I hope that answered your question. And thank you.